The killer phrase was at the end when Kimmel said, "You just don't realize it." Because you see, he's smarter than you, and he needs you to know that. And his ego can't bear that there's someone out there more famous and more influential than him. I got news for you, Kimmel. The last time you mattered, Bruce Jenner still had a
million views. Whereas, as I point out, on ABC, a massive network that comes into your home for free, that you have to make no effort to find, at best, Jimmy Kimmel can get 1.5 million. He needs to have a little self-perspective before going out there and hurling these insults because he looks a little silly.
What happens when a comedian who made his name with wild stunts, edgy jokes, and unapologetic humor suddenly tries to present himself as the moral guide for the whole country? In Jimmy Kimmel's case, the shift didn't just make people curious, it sparked a wave of backlash and intense criticism.
The other late-night host threw a hissy fit. It's too bad Tim Waltz is still grieving, or he could send them all a sack of industrial-strength tampons.
You all know what they saw. They saw what we saw. They saw the frail elderly man who needed help getting off the stage. They're just too chicken shit to tell us about it because they accurately deduced that he could still be the Democratic nominee and they don't want to ding him up. Maybe you give Barbara a pass. Who gives a damn what this singer saw or says? But you know what? Jimmy Kimmel happens to be employed by ABC, which happens to have a rather large news organization. And he has been one of President Trump's most vocal critics. Where are you, Jimmy? On vacation? Not good enough. You can still use your thumbs to send out a tweet. You could set the record straight right now, but you won't.
At the heart of this heated clash wasn't just a shift in comedy style. It was the growing gap, a wide, hard-to-ignore divide between Kimmel's well-documented past and his more lecturing present, fueling loud accusations of hypocrisy that quickly spread everywhere.
True, it was a terrible night for women, children, and for the hundreds of thousands of hard-working immigrants who cut his lawn.
It was a terrible night for women, for children, for the hundreds of thousands of hard-working immigrants who make this country go. For healthcare, for our climate.
Picture this, the king of cable snark riding high, while stepping into the role of chief prosecutors in this public showdown were Greg Gutfeld, the sarcastic, self-styled king of cable news comedy, and Megyn Kelly, the razor-sharp former prosecutor turned media heavyweight. Both were determined to tear apart what they saw as Kimmel's carefully crafted and ultimately fake reinvention.
Last night was the 96th Academy Awards show, and while you might have missed it, there was one clear winner. No, not Oppenheimer. It was sanctimonious leftists for their lead role in pretending they are better than you. Winner number one, Jimmy Kimmel. For the fourth time, Kimmel hosted the Oscars before an adoring crowd of Hollywood stars who laughed and curried favor with the man who wore blackface so many times. Yes, some of the very same celebrities who wanted you to believe they were horrified after yours truly said in 2018 that people used to don dark makeup in order to imitate well-known black celebrities and it wasn't a big deal. Absolutely ate up the performance by Hollywood darling Mr. Kimmel, whose blackface costumes included his oft-repeated bit as basketball star Karl Malone.
Now, Karl Malone never seen no flying saucer himself, but if he do, that's gonna be a spooky time.
The story really starts much earlier, back in a time that now feels almost unrecognizable compared to today's carefully polished media world. It was the late 90s and early 2000. During The Man Show, the testosterone-fueled spectacle Jimmy Kimmel co-hosted, a show that openly embraced bold, unapologetic, and often chauvinistic humor.
For everyone who voted against him, and guess what? It was a bad night for everyone who voted for him, too. You just don't realize it yet.
You know what? If I ever cry on TV, it'll be because Maroon 5 put out a new song. But that's it. You big Now,
Its signature segments, from girls jumping on trampolines to the Juggies Dance Squad, became either legendary or infamous, drawing outrage and big ratings with a bold confidence aimed squarely at a male-centric audience. But as Kimmel's career moved forward, a major shift started to take shape.
Just this past 2 weeks, they had the Kennedy Center honors the other night where Joe Biden couldn't say Dionne Warwick. He kept calling her Diane. and he didn't know who Barry Gibb was. He kept calling him Billy. You know who else was honored? At the Kennedy Center. You know who else? Billy Crystal. Just FYI, do you know who once opened up the Academy Awards in full blackface?
Oh,
Billy
yeah.
Crystal. Billy Crystal. And do you know who's going to be hosting the Academy Awards this year? Jimmy Kimmel. Do you know who's worn blackface repeatedly and spoken inner city sort of urban accent saying she needs to darn those socks? Jimmy Kimmel as Oprah, as a fat-suited, black-faced, darning socks Oprah.
Every public figure has a past, but for comedians who make their living by pushing limits, that past can turn into a minefield. For Kimmel, the skeletons in his comedy closet weren't just rattling. They were practically putting on a full performance, thanks to the internet's nonstop and unforgiving spotlight.
Late night host Jimmy Kimmel is back on the air after taking the summer off. He's missed a lot. Kimmel says if you're not vaccinated, you shouldn't get a hospital ICU bed. But I'm not sure if Jimmy was being sincere because he wasn't crying. Anyway, it's just funny hearing someone say, I see you, who nobody actually sees. Look, I don't want to suggest that Kimmel's show has become boring and predictable, but last night during the taping, people in the studio audience were changing the channel.
At the top of these resurfaced embarrassments was the infamous Karl Malone impersonation. It was a recurring bit where Kimmel appeared in full blackface, complete with an exaggerated voice, a portrayal that today stands out as deeply insensitive, in a time far more aware of racial implications.
You got the Sunday morning show with Stephanopoulos into the evening Academy Awards broadcast with Kimmel, and ABC elevating, the blackface lovin' Kimmel. They, at the same time, fired Chris Harrison, host of The Bachelor, for trying to defend one contestant on The Bachelorette for saying, gee, I know I went to this antebellum party, a couple years ago. I guess I didn't see anything wrong with it. And all he said was, are we judging her by today's standards or are we judging her by, old standards, whatever. He was basically trying to say, are we being too hard on her? Got fired. Chris Harrison has to be fired by ABC. I don't know why, because he's not a committed leftist, because he's not out there more saying all the terrible things about Republicans that Jimmy Kimmel says. So this is them saying, we get it. We're an ally, right? And I guess maybe they're trying to make up with their racist past, without ever acknowledging.
The same man who once built a career by leaning into stereotypes now speaks to his audience like a moral authority. And the Malone bit wasn't a one-off. Another troubling example was Kimmel's impersonation of Oprah Winfrey, again using dark makeup and a padded suit to create a caricature that today is widely seen as offensive and heavily stereotyped. These moments weren't forgotten relics from the past. They resurfaced as glaring exhibits for his critics to point to.
Jimmy's career peaked with busty girls on trampolines. Now the only boob we see is him. He once co-hosted The Man Show. Now he's sobbing like he just watched Steel Magnolias 3 days into his menstrual cycle.
Into this charged scene stepped Greg Gutfeld, a personality steadily building his own late-night empire. His Fox News show was gaining attention, thanks to its sharp, edgy, conservative-leaning monologues that started to rival the big players on network television.
Now, I will tell you, he's not the worst. The Daily Show has the worst ratings. They only have 366,000 people watching that show. During the Jon Stewart years, it was over 2 million. Now it's down to 300,000. Seth Meyers, absolutely dreadful. He doesn't even have 1 million, 778,000. I mean, for network television, this is, you don't have to pay for it. It's there when you turn on your TV. You plug it in. That's a dreadful number. Greg Gutfeld on cable, which you do have to pay for, it has more than double the numbers of Seth Meyers. Jimmy Kimmel, 1.5 million averaging, also equally horrible. And then
Gutfeld's main tactic in taking aim at Kimmel was his relentless claim of moral overcompensation syndrome. The idea that Kimmel's preachy, self-righteous persona wasn't true growth, that a desperate attempt to cover up his controversial past.
These fellas are experiencing deep mental pain. And it's not just them. Journalists are now offering tips to deal with their disappointment, frustration, even fear. And I get it. That's normal after any loss. I'm still mad about losing World's Sexiest Man to Johnny Depp. But why would people feel fear? Maybe because their only news sources are constantly telling them Trump's going to turn America into Nazi Germany. But you know who felt actual fear during the Biden administration? People who had to ride the subway or have to buy groceries.
Beyond labeling him psychologically, Gutfeld also hit Kimmel where it hurt most: the numbers. He constantly compared Kimmel's ratings to his own rising show, framing it as the audience rejecting Kimmel's self-righteous act and signaling his own growing dominance in the shifting late-night scene. Gutfeld didn't just poke fun at Kimmel's tears. He joked they were watering the seeds of his fading relevance, quipping, "If I ever cry on TV, it'll be because Maroon 5 put out a new song." It struck a chord with viewers tired of being lectured by mainstream hosts. If Gutfeld's attacks were a non-stop comedic barrage, Megyn Kelly's approach was surgical, bringing her prosecutorial precision and no-nonsense style through her independent media platform. She went straight for the jugular of Kimmel's image. Kelly didn't stop at the blackface controversies. She dug into the entire ethos of The Man Show, highlighting its blatant sexism and crude humor, and sharply contrasting it with Kimmel's current self-righteous persona. He was America's drunk uncle, Kelly pointed out, and now he's pretending to be its conscience. She also called out ABC and Disney for double standards, pointing to the swift firings of Chris Harrison or Roseanne Barr for controversies arguably smaller than Kimmel's documented history. Why was he seemingly protected? Kelly wielded facts like a surgeon's scalpel, peeling back Kimmel's polished image to expose the raw nerves of past missteps and present inconsistencies, highlighting a perceived lack of accountability and systemic bias. Amid this unrelenting scrutiny and the viral resurfacing of damaging clips, Kimmel's response, or rather his silence, became a story of its own. Some fans suggested he was strategically avoiding giving his critics more attention, but many saw it as the behavior of a man trapped, unable to defend himself against the weight of his past. His quiet was deafening. On top of his past, Kimmel's political shift also stirred debate. His outspoken anti-Trump stance, while applauded by some, alienated a large portion of the American audience. A flashpoint came at the 2024 Oscars when his joke at Trump's expense, "You just don't realize it yet," was criticized as egotistical, feeding the narrative that his comedy had turned into a predictable partisan echo chamber, leaving broad audiences behind. The combined impact of Gutfeld's satire and Kelly's precise critiques chipped away at Kimmel's carefully curated image, sparking a larger conversation about celebrity, accountability, and the limits of public reinvention. This saga went beyond Kimmel himself, showing how audiences are growing tired of perceived celebrity hypocrisy and how independent media can challenge established narratives. It raised hard questions about what it really costs to reinvent yourself and what authenticity looks like in the public eye. Ultimately, Kimmel's public reckoning is a striking example of a man whose past collided violently with his present. From provocateur to self-proclaimed moral guardian, he's been under a relentless microscope. And the Kimmel saga isn't just about one man. It reflects our times, where the lines between entertainer, activist, and hypocrite are constantly shifting, leaving us to wonder, can anyone truly evolve in the spotlight? And what does the future hold for late-night comedy itself?